and leaders of our church as we journey through topics that inform, engage, and inspire the daily life of our church.
Hello, and welcome to the Roundtable at Pulaski Heights, a podcast of discussions of substance. My name is Michael McMurray, and I'm one of the staff members here at Pulaski Heights.
My name's Daniel Curry. I'm on staff here at Pulaski Heights as well.
My name is Rowland, and I'm the Minister to Youth and Families here at Pulaski Heights.
And I'm Hocott. I'm the Director of Mid-Youth Ministry here at Pulaski Heights.
Yeah, today we're talking to Rod again, as you know, he retires from his almost 55 years of ministry. Mm-hmm. So Rod, we talked a lot about in our staff about a change we made recently to a 5th through 7th grade model for middle school ministry rather than a 6th through 8th model. Could you just talk about why we made that decision and how it's really impacted and made a difference for these kids?
I'd be happy to. When I retired from the conference in 2012, Conway, First United Methodist Church, the Conway Public Schools were going to a middle school program. The middle school included 5th, 6th, and 7th. And Conway Church wanted to get on board with a ministry for that group right off the bat. And so they called me and asked if I wanted a part-time job. And I said, there's no such thing in the church. And I said, sure, what do you want me to do? And they said, we want you to develop a middle school youth ministry for us. And I thought, well, there's a challenge there. I think I can do that. Of course, I had already done a similar thing like that when I was at Springdale First Church, when they went to a middle school program, except it was 6th, 7th, and 8th there. So we developed this program, and it started off slow. But when I left 6 years later, we were averaging about 55 to 60 kids. And it was, I think it was effective. It was a good program. And so I retired from there, and then Jay Clark said, we need the same thing at Pulaski Heights, so come here and do that. And I did, and I was glad to do that. But you asked me why it's important. Okay. When we started here at Pulaski Heights, we did middle school like they do in Little Rock, which is 6th, 7th, and 8th. Mm-hmm. And we just, 8th grade didn't come, 7th grade did, 6th graders, And so there was something wrong. It never really grew, and then, of course, COVID hit, and we kind of had to step back. But when Pam Lentz came here, our children's director from Conway, she was at Conway, she said, why aren't you doing it the way we know that works? I said, what are you talking about? She said, it needs to be 5th, 6th, and 7th. The reason that it needs to be 5th, 6th, and 7th is because 5th graders and 7th graders work better together than 7th graders and 9th graders do, or 6th graders and 8th graders even. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we started that this year, and right off the bat, we started with 45 kids, and now we're up to about 60. Mm-hmm. And so I only see whoever comes in to take over this program seeing this thing growing and getting bigger and better. So it all has to do with the age and how they communicate with each other. So that's why I think it works better. And you know that. You all know that. You've been there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, we were there in Conway. It was really cool to see, because I remember we started, it was, 20 kids, and
it grew even in the time that we were there.
Four of us volunteers, and it ballooned, It was really cool to see. And it was the cool thing to do in Conway.
Yeah. Well, I came in here, and it was 6th through 8th, and it was Rod and I couldn't put our finger on it.
Exactly.
These kids didn't mesh super well. 6th graders and their development are so different from kids that are in 8th grade in the way that even they think about things and think about spirituality. So trying to come up with one lesson for everybody was so taxing for you. Mm-hmm. And the minute that we made that change, it was like sitting down to a meal that's been prepared.
Yeah.
It was really sacred. It's cool.
And I would like to thank Pam Lentz for that, because she reminded me, what works. Let's do it that way. And so, oops, I'm sorry, Patrick.
Oh, man. Well, what would you say is the biggest success story in your ministry? Which I'm sure is really hard to choose. You have impacted an amazing amount of lives.
Yeah. I guess that there are so many people, so many out there, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. If my former students are watching this, but I think the best thing was starting the mid-youth program in Conway.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I loved working at the conference. I was there for 12 years. I traveled all over the state. I saw youth ministers and everything. But I think getting back into youth ministry and actually having the freedom, because that's what they did at Conway. They said, it's yours, you do it, and having the freedom to develop a program that was geared just to fifth through. I didn't want to, because for me, fifth graders were still children. They were in children's ministry.
Yeah.
But when I saw what worked, the question you asked a while ago, what worked for them, fifth through seventh is perfect, and it was so easy because they just, like I said, we started off with I think 17, but we ended up, but they would like bring their friends. And they would, it was just I just think that was for me, being able to have that freedom to develop and to be creative, I think was probably the best thing that's happened to me.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So after almost 55 years, you've had many successes, as we've already talked about, but there has to be some fantastic, funny stories. In 55 years of ministry, there has to be a good, funny story or two.
Yeah, and this particular one doesn't have to do with youth, but when I was at First Methodist Church in Fort Smith, when you're a youth minister, there's always that little thing at the bottom that said, and other duties. And so, but this was a privilege. I got to do the preschool chapel time each week.
Fun.
And so we would go to one of our chapels there in the church. I'd bring my guitar in, and I would tell them a story, a Bible story, and then we would sing some songs. But there was one little boy, and he would just sit on the front row, just like, And so I would get down and I would play my guitar, and we'd write in, and we would just sing. All the other kids were just singing these. And so his dad told me later. He said, I was talking to Christopher the other day, and I asked him how school was going. And he said, well, it's fine, except Jesus keeps trying to get me to sing. So that's one of my favorite stories that I like. Not that I'm comparing myself to Jesus, but
gosh, he thought you were.
He thought I was
That's
Jesus.
awesome.
My beard was a little darker back then. But
And Jesus can play the guitar.
Jesus can do it.
That's right.
Jesus
can do it.
That's right.
That's all.
That's right.
That's so fun.
So that's one of my best stories.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah.
What are some of you guys' favorite stories about Rod's working with Rod
Man.
for fun?
I think that because you had that freedom to mold your ministry in Conway the way that you saw fit, you gave us that same license. You kept us in bounds, obviously, but then you gave us the license as well to invest in those students. And that was one of the most special things for me, because I was still feeling out this call to ministry for myself. And serving in youth ministry after my time at UCA was, that you laid the foundation for me a little bit. So I'm forever thankful for that. But one of the fun stories, I think, has to be when you had a costume contest at mid-youth for Conway First United Methodist, and 5th through 7th graders came dressed to the nines in their best costume. And Michael and I got to MC that event, and you just had this joy on your face the entire time, not only just seeing these kids just have that much fun, but it was just a special time for me to be on the outside looking into you and seeing the joy on your face. It was awesome.
Yeah, we had a kid show up as a mummy wrapped in like
toilet paper mummy.
It was like 3 or 4 rolls, which now I'm thinking about, I'm like, that's so much money.
It was
like now
He committed.
I don't know if you want to compare like buying a costume versus toilet paper. I'm sure that was actually a real booth.
Probably evens out.
Yeah, absolutely. I have two that really highly impacted my ministry. One that I think is funny is that Rod, when he says that he lets mid-youth, 5th, 6th, and 7th graders choose what they get to do for mid-youth, it's for real. It's for real. And I walked in as a college student going, you're telling me that these like little kids essentially choose what they're going to do and it works. And I really saw the magic, and that has influenced my ministry so much. Our leadership team decides almost everything on a Sunday night down to like, the timing of everything. And that comes from Rod, allowing them that freedom. But my favorite moment of that, where I figured out that it worked, was that they decided that for one night they would go in teams around, and this was at First Conway, they would go around in teams and collect trash from around the neighborhood, and who could bring in the most trash wins. And all the adults were like, this is so dumb. This is the worst. They're going to hate it. They're going to be dirty. And instead, they had, some kids called it the greatest night of mid-youth they had ever participated in.
That's right.
They went to their houses that were walking distance from the church and dumped their entire bin into their bag and brought it back. They found really crazy stuff and thought that was fun.
Someone even found a tire, I think.
Yes, someone found a tire and rolled it back to the church. I mean, just fun and loving being together, which is environments that Rod always makes. So that's been really highly impactful. The other thing is that while I was working with Rod, a child came to us and I don't know if you remember this, brought us a note about how they're having trouble in school, and they talked about in the note being afraid and being overwhelmed and feeling like they wanted to harm themselves. And Rod and I pulled this child aside, and watching Rod remind that child how loved they are and how much purpose they had. And Rod and I even said, you are such a profound leader here that we think you might even be called to ministry. And I had that child at Hendricks Youth Institute this last summer. That child is called to ministry and has claimed that.
Wow.
And I have to believe that started when Rod empowered that child in that moment. And so that will always be a favorite memory for me.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
I think for me, it's really, it's hard to think of a single time. I always remember I would come to your office, I don't know, at like 4:30, like an hour before mid-youth started, just so you and I could just like talk about things. And and we would just like, and I just remember like all those times like talking to you about, just my life plans and all this. And you were always a great sounding board. And, it's one of the, like, it was just great to have a mentor, like you. And it was awesome to be able to, go through my own wrestling with ministry over the years and wrestling with, where do I fit in the church and everything with you. So it's really cool, and it's cool that we now work together.
See, and I thought you were going to be a youth minister as well.
I did too for a little bit.
Yeah. I felt your call.
Yeah.
I really did, but you're called to church work.
Yeah.
That's where you are, and that's where you shine, and that's good.
Yeah. Called to volunteer.
And we're lucky to have you.
Awesome.
Michael is, like, when you talk about a call to ministry, I think you really identified in Michael what makes being a good volunteer. When I'm really down and out and there's nobody else, I'm calling Michael, and he will wake up out of bed to come and be that second adult or drive or do whatever. I mean, that's ministry too. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about in our last episode about conference events. What is your favorite conference event?
My favorite conference event is Refuge. And I love it because where it's located, at Shepherd of the Ozarks Ranch, I love that. They have great food there.
They do.
And usually the speaker and the band are very, very good and speak directly to the kids that are the age group that we need them to speak to. But it's just, that's one of those places where kids have a lot of free time as well, and they have the opportunity to meet kids from all over.
Yeah.
Even though it's just a weekend long, they'll go away from there and we have kids, and you know that, that come back and say, I can't wait till next year.
Yeah.
I can't wait till next year. And so Refuge is is my favorite. I don't have to tell you my least favorite, so
That's awesome.
I won't go there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So to that point about youth having involvement and going to these events and volunteerism and all these things, parents can't always go. They can't always experience these trips or be a part of everything, and that's okay. We know that parents aren't always going to be there to go on every trip, and that's fine. But what's one thing that you wish parents might know about you, something you might wish a parent to know more about what youth ministry is or what ministry in general might be?
I think that I want parents to know that we're not a babysitting service, first of all. Don't drop off your kids and expect that we're just taking care of them for an hour and a half. The second thing I'd like parents to know is that they are the most important person for their child's faith development. And as much as they want us to do that, we can't do it all.
Yeah.
I have an hour and a half with their kids on Wednesday night. I have an hour, maybe 50 minutes with their kids on Sunday morning if they come. But they have to do the rest. It's just like schoolwork. You know, I mean, if their kids are having problems at school, they need to help with math or whatever it is that they can do. They need to do the same thing with their child's spiritual growth. And I really, really believe that. I'm also open to any parents who want to volunteer.
Yeah.
Parents make the best volunteers because
Yep.
they have a vested interest in what's going on in the program.
Yeah.
And so I'm open to that. If they want to come and find out what's going on, then that's fine. Can I tell you a real quick story about?
Yes.
We had
Yes,
Wonderfully
please.
Made this last weekend, which is an opportunity for to open communication between the parents and the kids.
Yeah.
So I sent out a note after it was over, telling the parents what a great time we had, because Dr. Amy Hewitt did a wonderful job. And a parent wrote back and she said, I need to tell you that from the time my daughter got in the car, we started talking, and we did not stop until we got home. She said, we laughed a lot, but she said, it opened the door for the conversation.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about. And I
Yes.
thought, okay, that's great. That's what we need to do.
That's awesome.
We need to do more of that with what happens Wednesday night. Go home and tell your parents what we did.
Yeah.
What was the devotional about? What was our small group about? What game did we play? It may not be anything that important, but I mean, just fun stuff.
Yeah.
So communicating with parents is very important, and I want the kids to do that
Yeah.
more and more.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Rod, thank you so much. I guess the only question is, when are you going to write your book?
Well, I guess it seems like I'll have time now.
There we go.
That's right.
Well, Rod, we want to thank you so much for impacting our lives and honestly the thousands of lives you've impacted since then. And congrats on retirement. And we want to thank you guys for watching the Roundtable and hearing us talk to, a ministry legend. And
Absolutely.
thanks for joining us for the Roundtable. We'll see you next week, and don't forget to tell somebody about Pulaski Heights United Methodist Church.
Right.